Hey Navigators, today we're on the road in Ybor City, historic, awesome place, Cuban heritage cigar factories. It's a really pretty ride. Let's get on our bikes and go.
Today we're in Hillsborough County in the northeast section of Tampa at a little place called Ybor City. Now it's spelt with a Y, but it sounds like an E. And this amazing historic town has incredible architecture, awesome shops, and delicious food. Hey Navigators, today we are in Ybor City. It's a city that was rolled into Tampa years ago, and it's just got this amazing architecture. It's just so cool. It's a beautiful ride. So Ybor City was founded by a guy named Vicente Martinez Ybor. Now he was born in Spain in 1818. He then moved to Cuba, which was under Spanish rule at the time, because he wanted to learn the tobacco trade. Over the next 20 years, he established his first cigar manufacturing business in Havana. But when the Cubans started to fight for their independence from Spain, he moved his business to Key West. But that wasn't the final place he would set up shop, because there was the thing called the Great Fire of Key West, which destroyed hundreds of homes and cigar factories, including his own. His main location was there, so he had to find somewhere else to go. And after some research, he found that the city of Tampa, which was very small at the time, it had the elements that he needed. It had the right climate, it had a port, and also it had access to Henry Plant's railroad. And we've talked about Henry Plant multiple times, including the ride where we went through the city that was named after him, Plant City. So Ybor purchased 40 acres of land northeast of Tampa and started to build homes and cigar factories for his business. Now, the funny thing is that people, when they first moved here, a lot of immigrants, Spanish, Cuban, and Italian, came into the area to work in the cigar factories, but early Ybor City had no amenities, or half of it really didn't have infrastructure. All the homes were built quickly and made of wood. The streets were not paved, they were thick sand. There were no sidewalks or street lights, so at night when people had to go from one destination to another, they had to not only carry a lantern, but a gun to protect themselves from the wildlife like alligators and bears and panthers and all the other animals that lived in the nearby swamps. Now what's amazing is how quickly and how important Ybor City became for the Tampa Bay area, and Tampa specifically. The cigar industry was so valuable that in 1885, the import-export duties at the port was only $683. But 10 years later, those duties were over $625,000. That's equivalent to $21 million today. Eventually, Ybor City was annexed by Tampa because Tampa wanted to increase their taxes, and the Ybor City residents needed the infrastructure that the city of Tampa could provide. Over the years, the industry grew so much that Ybor City became known as the cigar capital of the world. In the 1920s, it had over 200 factories and made hundreds of millions of cigars annually. One year alone, they produced over 500 million cigars. Okay, so this here is the Columbia restaurant, and it's amazing. It opened in 1905, and it's the oldest continuously operating Spanish restaurant in the U.S. Not only that, it's the largest Spanish restaurant in the world. It seats over 1,700 people inside, has multiple dining rooms. Because my son had just gotten married, and the day after the wedding, the two families all got together with a new husband and wife, and we had a brunch there, and it was great. They even had Spanish dancing in there. It was awesome. The cool thing is that the restaurant was founded by the Hernandez family back in the early 1900s, and it's still run by the descendants of that family. Now, the building itself is so gorgeous. It has Spanish and Moorish architectural elements. It has hand-painted tiles, wrought iron, woodwork. It's really great. Inside, there's a room called the 1910 room. Now, that's because it was built in 1910, but it's an intimate, elegant atmosphere, and it has dark wood paneling and chandeliers and murals that depict Spanish history. Another culinary icon from the Columbia is their salad. The Columbia salad is well known, very popular, and anyone that orders from the Columbia restaurant usually includes enough of the Columbia salad to share. Also, what's really fascinating is this restaurant actually has secret underground tunnels that connect the restaurant to other parts of Ybor City. Now, no one's really clear what they were used for. Obviously, some people believe that it was used for smuggling during Prohibition, but no one's really sure. And those tunnels have since been closed to the public. I don't know if we'll ever find evidence about what they were used for. The Columbia restaurant is really popular for anyone who stops by Ybor City, so if you're riding through, make sure you stop by and check it out. Over the years, many high-profile people have eaten there, including John F. Kennedy, Frank Sinatra, Charlie Chaplin. Not only just locals and tourists, but a lot of local and national celebrities eat there all the time. It's a cultural landmark, and it's a prime example of the immigrants who worked, lived, and built the city, and their influence through architecture, through food, through culture, still resides today. That's what makes riding through Ybor City so awesome. Hey, now that we're speaking of the Columbia restaurant, why don't we feed the algorithms? Algo, the alligator here, he needs your input. You know the drill. The platform is monitored by algorithms, and they just look for interaction, whether that's buttons pushed or comments added. So if you could, it would be great. If you've enjoyed this ride, you want others to enjoy it as well, do me a favor and just do things that the algorithms like, whether that's thumbs ups or subscribes or comments or anything like that. My first goal is to reach 100 subscribers as soon as possible. So if you can do that, that would be great. Also, I live in Florida, and if there's a place you want me to ride through in Florida to do one of these videos, let me know. And if I can do it, I will. So don't be shy. Ybor City is so special because it's like this small little cultural universe in the middle of the big city of Tampa. It's just so cool. You go from like standard urban areas to this incredibly authentic, historic, beautiful Cuban, Spanish, Italian-inspired community. The architecture is amazing, and these old cigar factories have always been so cool. So many of them have been abandoned for so long. A lot of them have been torn down, but some of them have been saved, and they've been turned into a lot of things. There's like the U-Haul warehouse or businesses. One of them is a small college. It's so cool to see these older buildings saved and reborn as new cigar factories or turned into something else. It's so important for this community to retain their history of the cigar capital of the world by investing and reusing these cigar factories for today's population. So one of the cool things that I found by researching Ybor City is that in the cigar factories, the workers, their job was very repetitive in just rolling cigars. And so what they would do, the workers would hire someone called a lector to read to them. And this person was well respected, and they often had to be highly educated because they had to look at text written in English or Italian and read it aloud in Spanish, which was the default language of the factories. And what was really neat is that this tradition actually came from Cuba, from their cigar factories, and their job was to read the news. They would read romance novels or adventure novels. They'd read political speeches or treatises. And it was great because it kept the workers' minds occupied. And what's even better about this is that even illiterate cigar workers were exposed to things like classic literature and could have conversations about political philosophy or current events in both Ybor City and around the world because they had this educated person reading to them every day. I think that's cool. As the city grew, back in the 20s, so did organized crime. So with organized crime, back in the day, there was a game called Bolita. I think that's how you say it. And it was basically a lottery game, and it was illegal, and it was run by organized crime. The system was so corrupt through bribes and kickbacks that these games operated openly. As a matter of fact, the guy in charge of all this was a guy named Charlie Wall, and he was the son of a former mayor. And once he got his teeth into the Bolita money, he started to diversify and got into bootlegging and casino gambling, prostitution, and any number of other illegal activities. And they were based out of Ybor City. Other crime families started to sprout up, and in the 40s there was the Era of Blood, where these small crime families started to fight for control of the organized crime in the area. A man named Santo Trafficante Sr. eventually won, and he pushed Wall aside. And later his son, Santo Trafficante Jr., extended his family's influence way beyond Ybor City. And I've even heard that he was potentially connected either directly or indirectly with the Kennedy assassination. Eventually, in the 1950s, organized crime was diminished greatly because the feds were trying to eliminate it throughout the country. All right, Navigators, that's our trip through Ybor City, small little place just northeast of Tampa. Check it out when you're in the area. It is awesome. It is great. The food's great. The shops are great. It's just a beautiful ride or a walk, whatever you want to do. Check it out when you can. It's great. As always, I want to thank you for joining me on the ride today. It means a lot that you spent the time with me today. So please, when you're out on the road, be safe, be kind, and be generous. And I will see you guys next time.